2.
So the Buffalo Bills make the playoffs for the first time. Well, they win the division for the first time in 25 years, and they have the first seed in the AFC, and the Patriots suck. Mitch McConnell is the Grinch again, holding out on $2,000 stimulus checks. And President Trump still has his followers believing, honestly, that he hasn't lost the election. Don't look at what I'm holding here. Look here, not there. Some things change and some things never will. It's Rob Nelson Live. Hey everybody, welcome to the Wednesday night show, last show of the year for Rob Nelson Live. This is my last show for the year. I'll be back next year. And remember how this year started, guys? Remember how 2020 started? Think back if you can. Doesn't it seem like it was like 10 years ago? Think back. Think to this moment. Remember Kobe Bryant dying? Remember when Kobe Bryant died? Literally, it's like the world came to a standstill. It was sort of like people almost couldn't make sense of it. Like Kobe Bryant died, a horrific plane crash. It's like world stopping. Remember Trump and Ukraine and the impeachment? We were impeaching the president. The Constitution was a mess, and Democrats were convinced that, Trump was going to destroy the republic, and they impeached him. Remember North Korea? Rocket Man in North Korea? Going to be like, he was going to destroy the world. We're going to have nuclear war. How about school shootings? Remember those school shootings? Or how about global warming? I mean, pretty much pick your thing that was going on at the beginning of the year. We forgot about all of it. Literally, what happened after March kind of erased everything we thought was going on before. Everything, guys, everything. I mean, stop and think. Put yourself back to February. Think what you were thinking. Think what you were thinking about your future, about your dreams. All the psychics telling you this was going to be a good year. This is your year. I ever wonder how the psychics never seem to get this one right. How did no psychics? Everybody goes to the psychic. I'm not saying I don't believe in paranormal stuff. I do. But how come no psychics were like, got to tell y'all something. This is going to be the crappiest year ever for all of you. Awesome Blossom. This is the Rob Nelson Live. It's an interactive, hyper-interactive live stream show. I used to do a show on Fox News. I had a show on Fox, a radio show on KBC. Now I'm all digital, and sometimes I have guests. Sometimes I do live events like town halls like I did in Jacksonville, doing another one in January. But every week, twice a week, I go on a rant, and you guys engage. So we're streaming on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, of course, and you guys get involved in the convo with me, and Crafty, my producer, pops your comments up and we go back and forth. I rant, you have your views. That's what this is. What is this? This is the best, most interactive show on the web. Or as one of our users said, the fastest 60 minutes online. Kobe's dead. Shocking, Power Crops. But listen, all joking aside about that, remember what a big deal it was when Kobe died. Everything stopped. The world kind of had a shattering moment. It was like, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, JFK, Princess Di, but it was like in the modern social media age, and it impacted us in a more massive way. It was like the biggest event. It would define 2020 until the pandemic hit, and that really defined 2020. And the George Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matter protests, that came on the heels. But at the end of the day, even the Black Lives Matter protests have somewhat, as I said they would, kind of faded to the sideline. The media got bored. The media got tired. Everything fades with the media, So school shootings faded. Global warming existential threat faded. Korea faded. Impeaching Trump faded. Even this election will fade eventually. We'll get to that. But the pandemic lives on. It just broke my pen. The pandemic lives on. And the pandemic changed everything. So when you look at 2020, it has been a Groundhog Day year. We'll get to that at the end. Remind me, I'm going to bring Groundhog Day back up. But just remember, Groundhog Day, you wake up, it's the same day over and over and over. And yeah, some things change and some things don't. Even in Groundhog Day, some things changed. Yeah, monkey arms. That was all in 2020, monkey arms. All that stuff happened and so much more in 2020. And yet the pandemic trumped everything, pun intended. The pandemic trumped Trump. Nothing else could bring Trump down. They tried for 4 years. They tried to, they tried to get him on collusion. They tried to impeach him. Well, they did impeach him, but it was never going to actually go anywhere. They were never going to get him out of office because the Republicans controlled the Senate, right? School shootings were the biggest deal. Everyone was like, this is the biggest threat we face in America. I talked to these kids in Jacksonville I'm doing a town hall with in January, and school shootings wasn't at the top of their list of things they were afraid of. What was? Mental health. Teenagers saying their biggest concern was their own mental health. And they didn't think the city and the school system was doing enough to provide mental health resources. You got teenagers. Teenagers are always the ones like, we're fine. Even if they aren't, they don't admit it. Saying our number one issue is our mental health. That's what the pandemic did. And like I said, nothing could really bring Trump down. Not his lies, not his philandering, not his completely obnoxious way of interacting with everyone, his bull in the China shop, taking on the intelligence communities, taking on the deep state, all of it. Nothing could stop Trump. The pandemic, don't go there. Don't go. See, the pandemic was a divine gift to stop Trump. The pandemic is hell. It's destroyed so much in our country, and it's destroyed us in so many ways. Thanks, Juan Botello. So let's talk for a second about a couple things. Let's start with stimulus checks. What the heck does Mitch McConnell think? Mitch McConnell, right? The creepy old dude who's been running the Senate forever. I get it. He's good at playing politics in the Senate, just the way Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are on the other side of the aisle. But seriously, he is trying to stop the $2,000 stimulus check payment on moral grounds. I can make those moral grounds, you guys. I can make the argument for the moral ground, okay? Not everybody should get $2,000. I get the logic. Why do government workers who are getting paid their salary from us every day, every month, every 2 weeks, same as they were before, getting just what they got before the pandemic, why do they need $2,000? Why do people who haven't lost any income need $2,000? Why not give $4,000 to the people who really need it and nothing to the people who don't? That's a fair argument. You can't play that argument right now. And I don't even just mean for politics. We'll talk about the politics of it. You can't play that argument, Mitch McConnell. You got a country that's reeling on its knees. You got a country you got governments that shut everything down. They told renters they could have a moratorium on paying their rents, but you're still going to have to make it up, and didn't do anything for the landlords on the other side. You don't get a moratorium on paying your mortgage. You don't have to be an evil landlord to go, I got 4 units here. I got to pay a mortgage. Nobody's paying my rent. How do I pay my mortgage? The bank ain't giving me a break. Japanese brutalism. You guys on Reddit have some of the best names. I can't believe we're living in a Panasonic. Wait, I thought this was Haps. I don't know if you didn't finish that or if I just didn't get it. I'm a little slow sometimes. So, Mitch McConnell holding out on the $2,000 is bizarre to me. I get his principle for why. And I get, he wants to attach things to it. He wants the whole Communications Decency Act, Section 230. That's the thing that allows Facebook, Twitter, social media platforms to be immune from third-party loss, from liability from third-party posts, right? It's one of the ways you can start making them be more fair. And he wants an election integrity review commission. Great. And he wants to tie him into the $2,000. Not great. It's exactly what they do on both sides of the aisle. Tie everything on. Give people $2,000 more. Just do it. You mess their lives up. And by the way, how about all those renters who got the moratorium? How are they going to all make it up? If you couldn't afford to pay your rent, Trump most admired man, Gallup poll at 18%, Biden pathetic 6%. That's an interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Trump was was marked up that high. Joe Biden's a scarecrow, guys. Come on, we'll talk about him in a sec. But think about it. Like the renters who couldn't pay their rent got a moratorium. What happens when the moratorium's over, which it is? How do you make up your back rent if you could barely pay, if you were living paycheck to paycheck to pay your rent? Where do you make up 9 months of lost rent? Where do you come up with it? Oh, out of my low-wage salary, I'll just make it up. You won't ever make it up. So you're not going to be able to, and the landlords aren't going to be able to let you keep staying there. So it kind of collapses on itself. Back to the point why Trump doesn't give. Sorry, I could get to that comment in a minute. It doesn't give why Mitch McConnell holds out on $2,000. And here's the thing. This is political suicide if you're Mitch McConnell. And this is what's wrong with Washington. They're so in their bubbles that they don't even see. I mean, if the Republicans lose the Senate, Democrats will control the House, the presidency, and the Senate. For anybody, even in the center, you are going to see all kinds of stuff go bye-bye. And all kinds of things you don't like happen. I'm a firm believer. I like divided government. I think it works. And usually we see a shift every 2 years in the midterms where people come in and vote, which every president loses seats usually because people want a balance. It's good. If you're Mitch McConnell, which part of you doesn't get that if you don't give that $2,000 out, they are going to destroy you in Georgia? You are going to lose both those seats. Look, even Trump gets it. Crafty, can you put that post up? This is Donald Trump on Instagram. Unless Republicans have a death wish, a death wish, and it's also the right thing to do, they must approve the $2,000 payments ASAP. $600 is not enough. Then he says, get rid of Section 230 and, don't let big tech steal our country and don't let Democrats steal the presidential election. Okay, so all three of those things, thanks, Crafty, all three of those things go. But you don't do all three right now. You just give them $2,000. Why is Trump saying it's a death wish? Because literally they will hammer you for holding out on the $2,000. And trust me, Mitch McConnell, every member of the Senate, they're getting their paychecks from us every single week. I almost feel like they should work for free. See, they don't suffer any of the consequences they put on everyone else. I know those of you say, yeah, but it's stupid to give everybody $2,000. Too late, that ship sailed. Give everybody $2,000. Deal with it. We go further into debt. Bad fiscal management. Absolutely. Our country is reeling right now. And if you don't give people that $2,000, they are going to hammer you in Georgia. That's what Trump is saying. He's like, unless you have a death wish, Republicans, give $2,000. Trump has a populist element to him. But Mitch McConnell, I am not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stand on principle. Guys, sometimes, and I've learned from experience, sometimes standing on principle cannot get you very far. Now, maybe it's the right thing to do, but you better be prepared to lose. Colin Kaepernick took a knee on principle. Never gotten back in the NFL. And honestly, if you watch the Jacksonville Jaguars play football, I mean, Colin Kaepernick would be a better quarterback for at least 3 teams than who they have right now. They're never going to let Colin Kaepernick back in. He paid a price for principle. I remember once when I had my Fox News show, Roger Ailes, who started Fox News, told me that, like, if he never told me to not say what I said. He just said, if, you appeal to like younger people, you appeal to blacks, you appeal to Latinos, you appeal to gay people, you appeal to women, you appeal to younger men, but you don't appeal to white conservative men over 55. That's your smallest group, Rob. And that's our biggest audience, was back then. And he's like, either you got to start saying what they want to hear, or we can't keep your show on. I'm not telling you have to, and it wasn't. He's like, I'm giving you a period of time, but I can't continue to finance the show because it's not making money. Your choice, Rob. I stood on principle. Ain't gonna do it. Not gonna do it. Gonna keep saying what I want to say. Sean Hannity said to me, you think I believe everything I say is true all the time? I was like, I hope so, Sean. He's like, come on, man. I get it. It's a cynical world. You want to stand on principle? Go ahead. This isn't the time, if you're Mitch McConnell, to stand on principle. It's also the right thing to do to give people the money. Yes, it would be smarter to allocate it to those who really need it most. Same way it would have been smarter to use lockdowns in a selective way to protect those who are most vulnerable. But at the end of the day, this is better than nothing. Give people money. They are going down the tubes. It's the first small step. What the rest of the world views as basic social safety networks, America thinks of as full-blown communism. You know what, 100 Waffles? I kind of agree with that. We're in a weird thing where everybody throws communism, socialism out there like all the time at people. And I get it, you know? It's like both sides use the extreme, you know, it's
Rob, we lost your audio, by the way.
How about now?
No.
Okay, cool.
Yep,
Little tech difficulties. We've had tech difficulties all week long, guys. I swear. I mean, I have a weird relationship with technology, but I call it the COVID technology. Back to the point. I think we get too crazy. And again, I'm not sure some of the basic social safety networks we're talking about always work. Right? I'm not sure if you make everything free, that's the best idea. And certainly, like even people talk about healthcare, you know, you talk to people from Britain, you know, and they'll say their healthcare system's great in some ways and horrible in other ways, right? And the truth is, people will always have that, the well-off, the powerful, the wealthy, the famous will always have more access to anything and be better than the average. But you still want to set a basic floor. And we've done a bad job of that. But I agree that just because we're trying to set certain basic safety measures does not mean it's full-blown communism. It's not. There's a balance. We've always found a balance. Labor unions, you know, when they first started, were that balance, right? Marx said capitalism would implode on itself. Why didn't it? Why didn't capitalism implode on itself? If you ever read Marx's theories of capitalism, it was going to implode on itself because the population that was the working population would get poorer and poorer, bigger and bigger, and a small number would get richer and richer, and it essentially would implode. It didn't happen because we self-regulated. Unions came in and were like, no. People like Henry Ford said, give people a living wage. It doesn't do any good to make cars if no one can buy them. It was economic logic. And even the pure communist countries like China modified to have more of a kind of a socialist capitalism on the economic side. So again, it's not all or nothing. It's finding a balance. We're really tough at finding a balance. I know people are going to call me Mr. Rogers. I don't know who Mitch is representing, Monkey Arms. It's a great question. Sometimes I've asked myself, who do any of these people think they're representing? I think they're representing their power. That's what I really think. Mitch McConnell ain't going to get unseated. No one's going to throw Mitch out of office very easily. He's got such a deep tentacle power base, just like Pelosi. You know, you're not going to unseat these guys. So, I mean, they're going to do 100 and still be in there. So I don't think it's constituents. I think, and I don't really believe it's just principle, because principles move really fluidly in politics when it's suddenly the other side doing what, you know, something that you did yourself, right? Both sides constantly switch. When you're doing it, you're bad. When I'm doing it, it's good. And we switch roles, and they never admit that they're all hypocrites. I think he's representing power. And he controls the Senate, and he's going to do what he's going to do. And some part of him is blinded to the fact that, you know what, it's just it's the right thing to do to give people money right now. It may not be the most efficient way to do it. It may not be the most fiscally conservative thing to do. But right now, we've made so many mistakes in this pandemic. Don't make the people suffering suffer more. Two, if you're just looking at pure politics, which you should be if you're him, it's a death wish for the two seats running in the runoff election January 3rd. In the Senate. And again, for those of you who don't know, if both those seats go Democrat, Democrats control both houses, Senate and House of Representatives and the presidency. Total control. They can pack the court, they can do whatever they want, and they will. That's just a balance of power. So I think Mitch represents power. And I think that's what a lot of these people do. I've looked at both sides, and I constantly come away saying, you don't really, I used to work in the White House, when I was in law school, and it was Clinton back in the day. And Rahm Emanuel, I don't know if you guys know who Rahm Emanuel is, but Rahm Emanuel was Obama's chief of staff, and then he was the mayor of Chicago till recently before Mayor Lightfoot became mayor. And I remember once I walked into the White House, And Rahm Emanuel was standing there, and I went to go through Secret Service, and I had my little blue badge. And Rahm Emanuel looks at the Secret Service agents and says, he's not allowed in here. Dead serious. And the Secret Service agents look at him and go, let's check his thing again. Because thought they was being serious. And they run in, they're like, sir, he is absolutely allowed. He's Blue Pass clears him to go. Blue Pass is the pass that gets you in anywhere. You can go in the White House, you can go in the States, but you can go in the FBI, you can go anywhere with a Blue Pass. People used to walk around Washington. They should probably do. And they'd put, if you had the Blue Pass, they'd wear it outside their jackets and stuff to be cool. Like, look at what I got. And Rahm looked at them, looked at me and said, well, he shouldn't be, and turned and walked away. My point in the story is Rahm had actually invited me to come to dinner with he and his wife like a few weeks before. But I was pretty independent, and I wasn't like on board the political train of just do whatever for political benefit. And Rahm was. You know, that was the time they were negotiating NAFTA, and I was sitting in meetings saying NAFTA is going to destroy the American worker. Why is a Democratic presidency pushing this? You know, Rahm didn't like dissent, and Rahm wanted anyone who wasn't a Democrat in line with the Democrat agenda, in line. His goal was put Democrats in office, period. Doesn't matter what they do, what they don't do, what they stand for. At the end of the day, put them in, put these in over ours. And that's how politics works at the national level. It's disgusting and it's sad, but it's what they do. Put our guys in. And as long as both parties hold some balance in it, they're okay because they sort of trade places. Tyler, isn't what Marxism predicted kind of what's happening now? I don't think so. I really don't. You know, I think we've always found, look, economic capitalism in a balanced way works, you know? I mean, that was my point with unions. Unions came in and gave workers a basis, gave them a foundation. Now, unions have gotten, in my mind, really bloated and corrupt and ultimately are part of the problem in this day and age. I'm not saying they don't serve a valid purpose still, but it's gotten abused. But the reality was back in the day, there were no protections for workers. So I don't think Marxism is what's happening now. I don't think that capitalism is imploding on itself. And again, look at places like China who use a weird form of kind of market-based capitalism to run their economy. You know, I mean, I don't think Marxism was ever going to, it was a theory, but it was never going to ultimately play out. Socialist countries always truly ultra like communist countries always fell in on themselves because the idea that like, you know, from each according to his ability to each according to his need, which was like the Chinese motto, right? Whatever I can give, I give. Whatever you need, you get. Always fell apart because the elites always took power and took more than their share. Power corrupts. People always take more. So in every communist country, you had a class of people who didn't live by the standards they held everyone else to. They had more money. They had more access. They broke all the rules for themselves. Shocking. What we see all politicians do. We see you do it in our country. We see it around the COVID stuff, like one set of rules for you and one for me. So I think at the end of the day, people didn't like the idea ultimately of like you work, you know, as hard as you can. You know, it sort of minimized everyone to the lowest. It deflated the ability of like entrepreneurship and innovation and merit to really work. You just kind of flattened everything out. So I don't think Marxism worked. I don't think it's even worked in countries that were Marxist. And I don't think we're seeing that here, but I do think we need to self-correct. And I think that's what 2021 might be a chance for us to do. Let me shift gears for a second, guys, because I got two more things I want to get to. I don't know who Bernie's representing. I've told you guys, I voted for Bernie in 2016, you know, and I'm not sure I like everything he was going to do. I don't, but I liked that he was principled. I liked that he believed in what he stood for. Oddly enough, it was like for me, Bernie or Trump, one of the two. Like, you know, both were going to be like, you know, train wreckers in a different way. But Bernie lost me when he didn't fight hard enough, when he sort of caved to Hillary and was like, well, whatever's better for the Democrats. That's not how you win. Whatever's better for the Democrats, I'll sacrifice myself so a Democrat can win. No way. If you were Bernie in this election, you never should have bowed out to Biden. You should have been like, now more than ever, America, what I'm about is what you need. You were already doing it anyway. You're bailing everybody out. Let me come in. This is my vision. I've had it for 35, 40 years. Let me fight for it. I'm not giving up just so Trump doesn't win. They all did that just long, keep Trump out. Bernie should have fought to the end and been like, I ain't quitting. If you really believe you had a vision for this country, that could save this country, then don't agree it's better to have Biden in than Trump. Be like, it's me. Who wins that way? Who wins? Better to have, think of an athlete. Better to have someone else in but me, even though I think I can do the job best. No, doesn't work that way. Okay, let's talk quickly about the election. And then to my big one, which I'm going to get to, which is the state of the American mindset. I don't agree 100 waffles. I don't think capitalism is imploding on itself at all. You know what? I just don't. And I get the argument. I do. And I do think labor unions have been gutted in many ways, but everything's cyclical. And capitalism isn't imploding on itself. And when you say that, again, don't get me wrong. I think we have massive problems and we have a massive growing underclass and we haven't dealt with it. But capitalism can solve that problem in a healthy, balanced way. You can create economic opportunities. Look, in the 60s, they tried just building houses and giving people apartments and you saw what happened in most of the projects. They just fell in on themselves. Nothing earned. People didn't learn how to earn it, didn't value it. I see it right now in Orlando with my buddy and his foundations. People living in these crappy, inner city communities, apartment buildings, and they're sleeping on the floor. It's they don't take care of anything. Like they never learned to. And there's no investment. There's no investment. Edward Waters College in Jacksonville is a historically Black college. There's no investment around it. Most colleges have investment around them. Why not? Because there's not an incentive. It's too risky. That's where capitalism, you'd say, fails. It's too risky to invest and grow these communities. But you could come up with a clever way to do it that's not too risky. You could offset that risk to some extent and incentivize companies to create job opportunities, create action. And I'm not just talking enterprise zones, to create economic infusions into communities that are impoverished and create training paths and create entrepreneurship skills and start teaching people how to actually make money in a legit way. Right now, if you live in a lot of inner city communities, being a drug dealer is the most profitable thing you could do. Working on the dark side, the crime side works for you. We could create an economic approach to growth that does bring the bottom up. Because I'm a big believer, we're only as strong as the people down at the bottom. So I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm saying it's a good tool to use. Okay, shifting to the election real quickly. Just want to touch on this because a lot of people are wondering what's going on with January 6th. So let me just give you the quick skinny. For those of you on the right who are convinced that Trump still has a shot, as I said before, one, you're allowed to dream, and I never want to take someone's dreams away, but you're living in a fantasy. Trump is not going to be president. And I don't know why he keeps saying it. I think he doesn't even believe it. I really don't think he does. I think he's playing with people, and I think he's got his own agenda for doing that. But here's the reality of what's going to happen. Because I hear people say, well, no, it's not over yet. January 6th. So you'll now have the quick skinny on how this works. January 6th, they come together. They've in Congress, and they approve the electors. People are arguing that Mike Pence, as the vice president, can choose to replace certain electors with other electors. In a nutshell, if a state, which the contested states did, have two slates of electors, one was the Democrat slate and one was the Republican slate, theoretically, the vice president could choose to pick one of those slates over the other. It's not clear based on what he would do it, other than the 12th Amendment, which essentially gives the vice president this untested authority to do so. If he were to do that, if he were to take the Republican electors for Wisconsin or Arizona and replace the Democrat electors and simply say, I'm using them, it would go to the Supreme Court. And I don't think the Supreme Court would uphold it. But he's not going to do it. He's not going to. What will happen on January 6th is now that Josh Hawley, the Republican senator from Missouri, has said he will contest the election results in the Senate, and you have about a dozen House Republicans who will do it, it will now, because you have both houses having someone contest it, it will force a debate in which both houses will debate and then vote. But they won't vote Trump out. First of all, Democrats control the House of Representatives. And Trump's probably got plenty of detractors on the Republican side in the Senate. They're not going to vote. They're going to debate it. And this is fine. They should. They did it in 2004 with they did it in 2016. Some people, they've done it before. It hasn't always made it to the vote. You have to have a member of both. You have to have a senator as well as members of the House. But it happened with, I mentioned the other day, with Barbara Boxer and and a House member doing it with the Kerry election to Bush, losing to Bush. A debate will happen and then they'll vote. They're not going to vote Trump in. It's not going to happen. They're just not. No, people argue, well, they're contesting things at the Supreme Court. They've now petitioned the Supreme Court to override the Wisconsin Supreme Court's decision to ignore the case that they brought, arguing there was voter fraud and people using the argument that they, essentially not adequately registering ballots that weren't matching the envelopes, people claiming indefinitely confined status so they didn't have to sign anything. Wisconsin 4-3 shot it down. Pennsylvania, same thing. They've asked the Supreme Court to review Pennsylvania. They've now asked the Supreme Court to review Wisconsin. It may or may not. The Supreme Court's been hesitant to touch any of this. But it's not going to overturn the election, guys. It's just not going to happen. And yet people think it is. I think labor unions and capitalism are not mutually exclusive. 100% true. And labor unions were an essential part of capitalism. But guys, in fairness, labor unions got really corrupt and bloated, I mean, go to any school district, go to any school district in America and look at how the unions work. They hold back educational reform. I've said before, and I worked at an inner city high school in LA that was a public school. And it was an innovative model that had broken a big, bad middle school and a giant high school that it fed into where everyone was failing, and into smaller schools, but still public. And the unions were the biggest obstacle because, seniority wins every time. People would talk about how much things got bloated and cost. They couldn't put in certain things like technology, computers, because the bid had to go through the unions and they triple it. There's corruption there. It's finding a balance. So back to Trump. Not going to win. Not going to happen. January 6th, Biden's going to be president. Why won't people let this go? This kind of comes to my last thing, which is the state of America and where we're at. Because I'm going to tie this Trump thing and people not letting it go all the way back around. Because there's a similarity between this and what happened 4 years ago. There's a similarity in both sides, as I said, do the same thing. Remember, the Trump people holding on, like it ain't over. We're not giving up. And anybody who doesn't agree with us is somehow corrupt. If you don't agree, if the Supreme Court doesn't agree, they're corrupt. Again, you could push this back to the state legislatures and they could actually vote a different way. The legislatures at the state level have the ability to change their electors. Most of the contested states have Republican legislatures. They could do it. Why aren't they? Are they all corrupt? Are they all anti-Trump? Are they all not Republicans? No. What about Supreme Court? Are they all corrupt? No. Are they all sold out? No. What about Pence? If he doesn't do it, is he a sellout? Trump's going to call everyone a sellout. Bill Barr, Attorney General, said we didn't find enough evidence of fraud to overturn this election. Is he corrupt too? But here's the thing. This is the key thing in all this. Stop for a minute if you're on the other side of this equation, on the left side, and ask yourself, you threw Bill Barr under the bus when he said that Russia collusion wasn't real. When after Mueller, he said this was a hoax. You all threw it. CNN, the media, everyone threw him under the bus. He's a sellout attorney general. He's doing Trump's bidding. He's corrupt, despite the fact that he had a reputation of being the opposite. Now he's not doing Trump's bidding. He's doing, again, what he thinks is the right thing. Which is it? It can't be both. I agree, by the way, lost in La Sauce, that automatically communism isn't a viable system. Right. That's an awesome point, by the way. So think about this on the left. You can't have it both ways. Bill Barr defended Trump on the Russian collusion stuff. And Mueller's report never found collusion. And people are like, yeah, but he did not find it. And maybe they just hid it so well. Yeah, okay, after years and millions of dollars and thousands of witnesses, whatever. They didn't have it. Subsequent documents coming out, emails and stuff from the FBI, clearly they didn't think they had it to start with. So many broken pieces around that, it's not funny. But when Bill Barr did that, everyone said he was a sellout. When he's doing this, why aren't you saying, you know what, he wasn't a sellout? Same thing with the Supreme Court. When you hear the Supreme Court make a ruling that's favorable to something on the right, you're immediately like, see, they're all a bunch of sellouts, political conservative sellouts. Then why didn't they do that now? Why didn't Barr, if he was in the Trump bandwagon for, to keep Trump in office, even though Trump was corrupt, why would he stop now? Why not then say, yeah, there's election interference? Because he clearly wasn't ever in one bed or the other. He was trying to do what he thought was fair and just and right. Why he didn't release the Hunter Biden probe stuff? Because it's a rule you generally don't do that right before an election. Somewhat unspoken, somewhat written, that you don't want to interfere with the election. So give Barr credit. Give the Supreme Court credit that they didn't do this. Not because they perhaps don't like Trump or want Trump to win or aren't conservative, but because they didn't think it actually made sense. It wasn't right. It wasn't accurate from a rule of law point of view. On the right, I hate that you're going to throw them all under the bus if they don't do it. It's like if you don't agree with what we said, but that's what the left's done too. If you don't agree with what we said, we throw you all under the bus. Why? Maybe this is proof that people like Bill Barr, the Supreme Court, actually does try to look at things. Granted, I don't think they're political in the way people think of politics. They are ideological. So more conservative justices with a more originalist view of the Constitution tend to the letter of what it says and interpret it more narrowly. But it doesn't make them political in the sense that they're going to favor one candidate over the other. And people get too caught up in that, always thinking if they don't do what I want, if they don't do our side, they're corrupt, they're sellouts. Versus going, maybe some of them are, but maybe in reality, we're seeing, just as I said 3 years ago, we're seeing that our constitutional system holds up just fine. It actually, when people were saying Trump's going to destroy it, the Republicans and Trump, I kept saying the Constitution's working fine. And in 43 years, you can elect someone different. He's not destroying the Constitution. The Constitution's holding up just fine. They've got flaws in it, but I think there's all kinds of things the Constitution could be improved. Don't think I'm crazy for saying that. Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers, thought you should have a convention every generation to update the Constitution for the times, for the next generations. Lost in the sauce. It's a mix of Reds not wanting to admit defeat and Blues wishing for the boogeyman to do what they think the boogeyman will do. Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it, to be honest. I'm going to say, I think it is a combination, but you had it the other way, right? So in the election, now you have the red side not wanting to admit defeat, but you had that 4 years ago with the blue side not wanting to admit defeat and thus starting an attempt to sort of undermine Trump's presidency, which I always argued, even if you weren't a fan of his, why not let him try to do things for the country? Why do you want to stop him at all costs and say we have to because the Constitution, the Republic's in jeopardy? The Republic was fine and still is fine. Even as he sits there and says he hasn't lost, he's not undermining the ability for the Constitution to work. That's why we're going to see Joe Biden president, the scarecrow. And I think Biden will be a horrible president. Doesn't mean I hope he does well, but I don't think he will because I don't think he stands for anything, honestly. I've said this to my friends on the left before. You elected a scarecrow. Maybe to you that was better than Trump. Anything was. But you didn't elect a guy with a vision, and you don't even know what his vision is if he has one. And he hasn't articulated it, and he's done nothing remarkable in his career to other than stay in office forever, really, to be like the leader of the country at such a difficult time. I mean, the fact that was the best you guys had to offer, again, Bernie would have done better, no question about it. But it bothers me that we're doing this thing where both sides insist I'm right. And even after collusion and the whole thing, if you didn't agree that somehow they didn't find collusion, then you were just in the tank. You were just in the tank with Republicans. Whoever it was, they were all in it. And, CNN was going to insist it happened anyway. And people were going to be like, no, it doesn't matter what they found. It's like at a certain point, both sides do this. Like admit you were wrong. Admit there wasn't collusion. Admit Bill Barr wasn't actually trying to side with Trump because he's crooked. Otherwise, he'd be doing it right now. Admit that the Supreme Court isn't political in the way Democrats and Republicans are political. It's ideological, and there's a huge difference. That doesn't mean you don't want activist judges if you're on the left. Maybe you do like the notion of a more activist judiciary. But right now on the right, you guys are being a little activist judiciary yourself, wanting the courts to come in and do the very things which would appear to be activist judiciary. You're saying, no. It's just interpreting the way it is. No such thing. Very activist judiciary to ask the courts to come in and throw out laws, throw out votes in states because those states made laws and those laws shouldn't have been allowed to have been made. It's too late for that. People voted on the premise that those laws were legit. Fix it for the next time. Fix it later on. They made laws they shouldn't have been able to make. And they violated their state constitutions in doing it. But you don't fix it after people relied on that and voted. Now you're just throwing out credible ballots. Well, monkey arms, hopefully you wouldn't take to the streets in violence, But I don't, look, I've said this before. I don't know if the election was stolen from Trump. I think there was corruption and fraud. I've said a million times, I think the nature of letting people vote through the mail without safeguards to ensure people were who they said was going to lead to a massive amount of fraud. And I think there was probably some coordinated fraud, but they weren't able to prove it. And they still haven't proven it at a level that overturns the election. And the reality is a whole lot of people just wanted someone other than Trump. And Trump can come back and run in 2024. We're near the end here. Let me wrap on something that I think is interesting to me. Fox News did a poll. Get this, guys, okay? A poll about how people feel about the country. 2020, 67% say it was a bad year for themselves. In 2019, 26% said it was a bad year for themselves. In 2020, 25% said it was a good year for themselves compared to 50% last year. And 78% this year said it was a bad year for the USA compared to 38% last year. That's not shocking, right? It's been a bad year. But here's what struck me as fascinating. In 2016, 77% of people polled said they thought that America was a dysfunctional family that was breaking apart. 18% said it was a tight-knit family that was working through stuff and getting better. That's 2016. In 2020, it's down to 70%. In other words, 7% fewer people in this polling think that America is a dysfunctional family than they thought 4 years ago. And 6% more think that we're a tight-knit family. What planet are those people living on? That's what I want to know. What planet are you living on if you think we are less dysfunctional now than we were 4 years ago? We have hit the epitome of dysfunction. I mean, literally, we are in this. Oh, interesting. That Wild Zookeeper Game 17, you got me on that one. I had to interrupt myself for that. I think that's a little too conspiracy. But you know what? Don't get me saying that because I don't believe in conspiracies. I do. I think conspiracies, again, I hate the fact that you say it's a conspiracy as if you made it up. Like, conspiracy means something's being hidden and it's conspiring to keep it hidden. Right? I mean, some conspiracies are real, some are fake. They're real conspiracies. Did the intelligence community want to bring Donald Trump down? 100%. Don't kid yourself on that. He went after the intelligence community early. He went after every institution of power early, and they wanted him gone. The intelligence community doesn't want to be messed with, and they'll manipulate everything they can. They managed to manipulate most liberals into thinking the intelligence community is great. The guys spying on you, the people spying on you are great. Don't forget Edward Snowden, who in my book is a hero. No, it's possible they did plan all kinds of things in to bring Trump down. I don't know that Bill Barr was one of them. And I've always and will always admire Trump for being a bull in the china shop because as crazy and sociopathic or whatever the word for him is, narcissistic, as obsessed, petty as he can be, somebody needed to come in and break up institutions. And ultimately, that to me is what leads the path to change. AOC wouldn't have gotten elected if it wasn't for Trump. So you on the progressive side, your progressive future has been enhanced because Trump bashed in a lot of things. And both sides, I think, is an opportunity. But are we less divided? Do people think we're less divided? We are the most divided we've ever been. We are literally like ripping ourselves apart. And my plea as we end the year is Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Austin. They're not gonna. Trump's not gonna be president. I don't think Trump goes to bed at night thinking he's gonna be president. He's not gonna use the Insurrection Act. He's not. He's gearing up, I think, to announce that he's gonna run again, and he's gonna claim it was stolen from me, because that's what Trump does. He's a bad loser and he's a master manipulator. He used to always say, Trump does something over here that makes everybody go crazy, so you don't see what he's doing over here. It's a master manipulator. Like a magician. We are more divided than we've ever been, guys. More divided. And we got to stop. Again, I'm going to be Mr. Rogers here. It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. We got to stop. You can't just look, whichever side you're on, and realize, are you doing what the other side did? Are you doing the same thing? Both sides. You know, the red right now to me is doing what the blue did around impeachment and around collusion and around everything Trump. No matter what happens, somehow, if you don't get the conclusion I want, you're corrupt, you're broken, you're part of the conspiracy. And I feel like that's what they're doing right now with the election. If it doesn't go our way, even though we have Republican legislatures, a conservative Supreme Court, you know, a Republican vice president, if they don't do it, they're all corrupt and in on the conspiracy. Or they just don't see it. It just doesn't stack up. Yeah, well, yeah. But you know what, Monkey Arms? I'd say think of the poor folks who believed on the other side. Because again, I'm going to challenge you to realize that on the left, you guys did the same thing. Honestly, when wandering in there, convinced Trump committed collusion. I know people who still think he did. There was no collusion with the Russians. Zero. The Russians wanted to create chaos, and their goal has always been create division, is to upend everything. They don't really care who wins as long as it's upended. That's how they play their rivalry game. There was no collusion. Mueller couldn't prove it. And now the evidence shows that they didn't even think it was there inside the FBI. And they did all kinds of things, and they had the media on board, the intelligence community. Maybe they wanted him out. Maybe it was driven by that. I don't know. But both sides have done this. Both sides buy the extreme notion instead of looking to go, And you know who loses? We do. We all lose. We all lose when this happens. So, wrapping up on that note. Wait, can you put that back up, Crafty? Tyler's comment? No, I don't. Sorry, I rubbed my nose right in the middle of the cast. It itched. It's not COVID. Don't worry. No, I don't agree that he conspired with Russia. I don't see any basis for it. Russia didn't want Trump per se or Hillary. Russia wants to create chaos in the democratic system. They feel somehow that helps them, whether it does or doesn't. You know, they think it's how they weaken their opponent. It's an old thing. It goes way back. It goes 60 years back. You know, I don't believe Trump conspired or colluded. I don't think their campaign was able to. You know, and again, the biggest thing you got is Flynn, who got convicted of, again, doing what? Lying in an interview that was kind of a setup that they said were going to try to get him to trip up. And what did he lie about? Having a meeting that he was absolutely allowed to have. There was no problem with him as an incoming national security advisor having the meeting he was having. And yet, for that, he didn't tell it accurately. And for that was his crime. But he didn't do anything actually wrong. It's a crazy notion, you know? Like, even with Trump and the impeachment stuff, right? His crime was, it was going to be if they didn't, you know, if he wasn't fully honest. If you're not fully honest about something you did that was okay to do, is it still a crime? Like, you didn't commit the crime, but if you lied about the crime you didn't commit, which you didn't commit, then now your crime is that, right? You block justice. But if you didn't actually commit a crime to start with, what are you blocking? It's like if you said I robbed the bank and I didn't, but I lied about certain things and you got me for lying and obstructing justice, for lying about a crime I didn't actually commit, and you could prove I didn't commit it. It's crazy logic. Here's what I want to end on. Empathy, guys. I know I'm going to go. Thanks, Zookeeper Game 17. I'm going to go totally out here as we wrap this up. I'm over my time. Crafty producer is already going to be raining down on me. This is a weird year. And next year is going to be a weird year for a while. Remember I said the Bills are going to in the playoffs, right? Andrew Cuomo, they're going to allow 6,700 fans in the stadium. I'm all for that. I like fans going to the game. But restaurants in New York are closed. But you can have 6,700 people go to a football game because they'll social distance and they'll wear masks. I don't care. People can social distance and wear masks at restaurants. Open the friggin' restaurants up. We all need a little bit of empathy right now. And that goes for the politicians. That goes for the left to the right and the right to the left. We're running on zero empathy. And I guess I'm a bit of an empath. I'm not saying this in a kooky way, but literally, I have one of those people who is hyper empathetic. So I was good at talk show stuff. In fact, quick story. When I was in college, I was student body president, and I went to sleep. There was no one on campus except the new students were coming the next day. And at 11 o'clock at night, I literally felt like someone was choking me. Like I wanted to die. I literally wanted to kill myself. I'm like, why do I want to kill myself? I don't actually want to kill myself. Why do I think I want to kill myself? But I felt like I want to kill myself for no reason. And I remember at exactly the time, 45 minutes later, when just like that, boom, it went away. It was like, I got like, what the was that? What just possessed me for 45 minutes? The next morning, I got woken up, went to the president of the university's office to be told that one of the incoming students who I was supposed to greet had committed suicide the night before. And here was the crazy thing. His mom knew what time he came home because friends dropped him off. And it was the time when I started feeling suffocated. He said he went up to his room. And the time when I suddenly felt free, literally, was when she heard a gunshot go off. Because we had the times. Am I kooky? No. I was on that guy's future. He was coming to meet me. I believe our thoughts carry out there. I believe we're all connected in a certain way. And we can all feel things through each other. Is it paranormal? Maybe, but paranormal is real. Just because it's paranormal doesn't mean it's not real. And I believe we all have the ability to be more empathetic and to feel each other more and to communicate in a different way. And if we're going to get through this all, if we're going to get through this pandemic, despite all the bad choices that have been made, despite all the blame that can go all the way around, if we're going to get through this divisiveness that's happened around this election, if we're going to actually make America, stop for a second, a better place for most Americans, because a lot of this argument happens amongst elites in power. Millions and millions of Americans are suffering, and we're before this pandemic. If we want to make this country a better place for everyone, and particularly for those in need and for the next generation, we have to start finding a way to be more tolerant. And that doesn't mean tolerant in the sense of, I joked, it's not over till the fat lady sings, which I call it's not over till the body inclusive, gender neutral pronoun sings. Inclusive, being more tolerant doesn't mean you make me say the words you want. To truly more tolerant of those who don't see what we see and more empathetic. We still are one country. And we're still one human race. I went a little metaphysical there, but hey, it's the end of the year. Happy beginning of 2020 in a day, 2021. End of 2020, beginning of 2021. And thank you guys for watching.